Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, Australian author of kick-ass heroines and action-packed romantic fantasy worlds. And I have a very special guest for you. We are talking dashing rogues and feisty heroines, and also 2019 RWA's Australian Historical Romance winner. We are talking to the one and only Maddison Michaels. How are you today?
Hey, Kira, I'm really well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on today because one, your covers are very steamy.
And they are, aren't they?
A bit of historical romance. So I would love to know where you started, where and why did you write your first book?
Well, my first book was a work in progress for a long time, but I think I originally became just in love with the genre of historical romance when I picked or perhaps borrowed one of my mum's books when I was about 13 or 14. I think it was a Georgette Heyer one. Sorry. So I just loved being transported to a different world. So after that one, I then thought, okay, what other books are out there in this sort of genre? And I picked up my first Amanda Quick book, and that was Dangerous, and Deception was the other one I read. And I was hooked after that. Absolutely loved the genre. Amanda always pairs a little bit of a mystery as well with her romances, which I adore. And I always write also with my romances always have mystery and suspense in them too. But yeah, so I started on Amanda Quick, then I moved to Julie Garwood, Catherine Coulter, Mary Jo Putney, huge names in the industry, and I loved it. So, I mean, who doesn't love a ball gown and, suspense and mystery, but romance and a love to last a lifetime. So I was hooked, and I realised then that I wanted to write that way too, because I got so much enjoyment and it really did transport me to a different world. I wanted to bring that bit of magic to other people with the stories that kept coming into my head. So that's what started me on knowing that I actually wanted to write. But knowing you want to do something is a different thing to actually doing it. So it took me, and obviously I became a police officer in the meantime, and I went on that journey, had a baby, and so life happened, and my writing got put on the back burner. But then I got to a point in my life where I realised that this is what I want to be doing with my life. I want to write and I want to tell my stories. So I got to a point where I'm like, Maddie, you have to just either do this or not. So I actually finished the first manuscript back in 2017, which was The Devilish Duke. And that was the first actual book I had finished. I'd always started writing, got to about the 10,000, 15,000 word mark. And some other idea popped into my head and, that was more interesting. So I moved on to that. So it took me a bit of time. And I think maturity and life experience to actually get to a point where I'm like, no, I actually just have to finish the book. And Devlin and Sophie's story was really resonating with me. So I really wanted to get that story finished. And I did. And that actually was what landed me my agent and my publisher and won the RWA Award. So that was pretty cool.
If you finished that book in 2017, it was 2019 you won that RWA Award, which is phenomenal. So congratulations. What an amazing sort of turnaround for time, I want to say as well, to also acquire an agent in that time and also traditionally publish with the trifecta of winning an award. That's so amazing. How did you go through that process? Like, that's a lot to accomplish in 2 years. So how did you, when was I'm an author moment for you?
Well, it seems quick, but I do have to say that about half of the manuscript had been written about 10 years before that. So it took me a very long time to actually get to the point where I'm like, this is it, I need to finish it. And I sat down and I actually wrote it. I even surprised myself, and I think I wrote at one point like 30,000 words over a 3-day period. So I don't know, I just got the bug and I just had to write it. So Once I did that, I knew that for historical romance and that genre, I really wanted to get a traditional publisher and an agent for it, basically. So after I did finish the draft and edits, I had to do the dreaded synopsis, which I still to this day hate. They're so difficult. That's the one bad thing about traditional publishing. You have to, even after you're a published author, you still have to submit at least a synopsis, if not a couple of chapters as well. But yeah, so you have to condense, and my books are big books. They're not short 60,000 romances. They're about 120,000 words usually. So I have to condense that into about 2, maybe 3 pages if I can squeeze it. But yeah, so I knew that was where I wanted to go. I wanted to go down the traditional route, especially for my first book. And at the time, I had a full-time job as well. I've only just this year become a full-time author. So yeah, so I knew I had a lot of competing priorities. I had my family, my work. So I just knew I didn't have the time, as much as I probably would have preferred to self-publish. I didn't have the time to be doing all the extra back-end things. So I was really lucky in that once I did my synopsis, I did a query letter, I sent that out. I actually got about 20 agents that were interested and wanted full manuscripts. Yeah, so that was really good. And in the end, I ended up having 4 agents offer to represent me. So I ended up going with the Knight Agency, which is very, very well known for their romance authors. So yeah, and I got my Entangled publishing contract through that. So it was pretty cool. So.
And that would have been very interesting too, having obviously, first of all, that's amazing that you had 20 agents interested, and then having to do that thorough research on each of them and trying to decide who is the best agent for you. Because I think a lot of people tend to, if they get one off, they're like, this is it, this has to be it. Whereas sometimes it's not the best marriage, I want to say. So it's interesting. How did you sort of dwindle down and process that Knight Agency was the best for you?
Well, I had Zoom calls with the 4 agents, and then I broke it down to 2, between 2 who I really just got on well with and who I liked the direction that they wanted to take, my career in. I also, after the first Zoom call, I organised second Zoom calls, and I ended up going with Pamela Harty from the Knight Agency, because she gave me some really great feedback on how to make my manuscript better and tighten it up, and some of the things she could see. And that actually really helped. So I really thought I can work well with her in terms of, it being a partnership more, as opposed to she'll just be taking my money in royalties and stuff. So yeah, so that's how I ended up deciding. It was just through really talking to her and having questions before the Zooms. I wrote down questions that I asked each of them, how they would do this or what they did with that. And that helped me to really narrow it down. But at the end of the day, I went with my gut in terms of who felt the best to go with. So yeah.
I'm a little bit curious. Do you write then in Australian English or US English?
US English. Yeah, because all the US publishers, you have to, it's in US. So it's funny, some of my Australian readers, there's spelling issues in there. It's like, well, no, it's actually because it's in US. It's a US publisher. But yeah, I still get picked up in copy edits for some Australian spelling, even though I've set the, Word document and stuff to US spelling, there's still sometimes I can't help myself.
Your covers are stunning. And one that really I gravitated towards was The Bachelor Bargain, which is a part of your Scandals, Sins and Spies, is it? No.
Secret Scandals and Spies.
Scandals, Spies. I was like, why am I thinking sin? Because the cover is sinful. That's probably why, because sin just kept coming up. But can you tell me a little bit about that series and what gave you the inspiration for it?
Well, that's my latest series, and I love writing heroines that are very strong, independent, and pushing the boundaries of that era, because all my books are set in the Victorian era. The first series is in the mid 1850s, and this new series is in the 1880s. So there was a lot of new innovations happening. Women were starting to push the edges in terms of what they could and couldn't do. So it's a really exciting time in that era historically for women. So I really wanted to explore like a series with three women, three best friends that are really doing something different to what the molds say they can do. So that's kind of where it started. And it's actually the book 2 now that's just released, The Bachelor Betrayal. That was actually meant to be book 1. Kat's story was going to be first. But then I realised it needed more of an origin story in terms of the Bachelor Bounty Gazette, which is a magazine, the anonymous gazette that the three women set up to out the nefarious bachelors of society. So yeah, so that I really needed that set up initially. And I had so much fun writing Livy and Sebastian's story, actually. It's one of my favourites, and I didn't anticipate it to be, but yeah, and Entangled have done a beautiful job on the covers for them. They're just gorgeous.
Why was theirs one of your favourite stories to write?
I think it's funny, with that story, it really came together more in the edits, if that makes sense. So I had done the first, version that I sent through to my editor, and, she's brilliant, by the way, Stacey Abrams, and she, made some suggestions, and I really thought about it, and I really worked a bit more on the ending, and I added in a few more scenes. And there'd always been this scene that it was niggling at the back of my head about Livy and Sebastian dancing at a ball. Now, my heroine Livy actually has a limp, so she doesn't dance. Okay. So, but it never made its way into the first draft. But then as I was thinking how I could extend the ending a bit more, give it a bit more of an impact for readers, that black moment and then the happy ever after, it came to me. And so I really love how it turned out. I even kind of cried a bit myself in the end of the book, and it's like I don't normally do that. So it's it's weird that the characters really grew on me after I wrote them. So whereas in the second book, Kat, the heroine, I love Kat. She's kick-ass, she's independent, she has had a super unconventional upbringing because her uncle was a spy, so he's trained her to defend herself, like her parents couldn't because they were murdered when she was a child. So she really pushes the boundaries of Victorian England. So, and yeah, there's a little bit of, fictitious artistic license taken there, but there were female spies back in the Victorian era, so it's not beyond the realms of reality.
How do you go with research then? Because to write about an era in the 18th, like to write that time period, I imagine it's quite difficult. And personally, it's something I would not like to touch because I'm too nervous that I will get fact checked. So how do you go with that?
Yeah, I love history. That's probably why I do enjoy writing it, because I love finding out about, all these little tidbits that you just don't know, So once I settled on the Victorian era initially, every book I do write, I do refresh myself on, what was happening during those time periods. So even though it might not make it into the story, it kind of informs how the story is written and what my characters are up to. So, I mean, there are some critics out there that, and unfortunately, a lot of people get confused and think it's Regency, because Regency is the main period in history that historical romances are written in, and that's obviously set well before the Victorian era, and huge differences in what could be done, couldn't be done, what technology was available. I mean, in the 1880s, you had electricity, you had lighting starting to become available. You had toilets, flushing toilets that started to become available. So you never had that in the Regency period. So there was a lot more innovation, the railroads were making huge inroads. You had the telegram, so you had people, you had the first telephone as well, so you had people being able to use telephones if they were wealthy enough. So I think a lot of armchair critics sometimes get confused with it is actually set in the Victorian era, not the Regency. So I just take it with a grain of salt. And I think having a traditional publisher is handy in a way because it goes through so many edits that you do have the copy editor checking all of that historical stuff as well. So if there's something that's not correct, they highlight it and say this wasn't at that time or whatever. And so then I can actually remind me, oh yeah, it wasn't, or actually no, it was. And so it's handy having those checks and balances from the publisher as well.
What is something then you would, I want to say suggestions you would make to somebody who wants to start writing historical romance? What would your advice be to a new writer?
I suppose, really know what period you're writing in because they are very distinct, different periods. The majority is Regency. So I suppose if they do want to make it a little bit more sellable, if they want to go down the traditional route, traditional publishers do prefer that it's written in Regency periods, but they are starting to get more open to the other periods. So I suppose, just research and it's a fine line between your voice in terms of how you write on the page sounding historical or too modern. But having said that, a lot of publishers nowadays want a more modern voice, but with the historical setting, especially US publishers. So it's not like you read a lot of traditional books, say, for example, Jane Austen's work, and I love Pride and Prejudice, one of my favourite books, but her usage of words is very different to how we talk now, very different to how we write now. So if you were trying to emulate that as a first-time writer, it would probably be difficult to sell it to a publisher because regular readers want something they can read quickly, not have to struggle over to understand the way the words are phrased. So I would just say, write what's in your heart. And if you want to write a historical, just, do research the period and go with your voice. Don't try and force a historical voice.
It's amazing that this is, the year that you have now gone full-time writing, which is amazing. So congratulations, firstly. But what does your 9 till 5 look like now? How have you changed your entire day? And are you a plotter or a pantser?
Well, I'm still trying to actually get my head around writing full time and getting into a proper routine because usually, obviously, I was at work, I would write at night. So that was my time to write at night and on the weekends when I had time. So to switch over from nighttime writing to writing during the day has been a little bit hard for me. So I'm still adjusting and trying to work out my schedule. But ultimately, I get up at 6 each morning and I spend the first hour just relaxing, social media, on my phone, having a cup of coffee. And then by 7, I'm at the keyboard and I'm ideally writing. At the moment, I'm working on a new proposal. So, I'm quite excited about it too, actually. So, and this one actually is, touch wood, it's for a print deal for America. So the books will be in Walmart and Target and stuff. So fingers crossed. So I'm still juggling what my actual day is. Like, obviously, I've got a daughter, she needs to be picked up from school. So my time I'm trying to balance as between from the start of the morning to about the early afternoon is when I write, so that I can have free time in the afternoons with my family and relax after, treating it like an actual day job and not a hobby anymore. So I'm still working on it. In terms of if I'm a plotter or a pantser, I'm definitely a plotter. I have to be because most of my stories all have really complex kind of twists and mystery, a suspense to be solved. So I always have a baddie, and I want to try and keep my reader guessing as to who that is. So I really have to try and work out the subplot in terms of the mystery. So yeah, I have to be a plotter, although sometimes it's easier said than done, because sometimes the characters go off on tangents and I either have to rein them back in or I just have to go with the flow. So I have to be a bit flexible too. But yeah, definitely I love plotting. The easiest book I wrote was my second book, The Elusive Earl. I had plotted that to like every single scene I had plotted, and I just was able to write that so easily. It was amazing. I was like, yep, every day, okay, I know what I'm doing. And off I went. So I haven't actually been able to replicate that with the other books. that was like my ideal. So I will hopefully get back to that kind of area of, yep, plot, off I go writing. So I liken plotting to having a map. I'm a real map girl. I love having a map in front of me and knowing boom, boom, boom. So yeah, so that's why I'm a plotter.
And one thing that I found I found many fascinating things about you, but you were a police officer for 16 years, which you mentioned before, and you actually credit a lot of your ability to write mystery and suspense from having that career. I'm kind of curious as to whether you have like any real life events or situations that you kind of put in there a little bit.
No, not really, because obviously they're set in historical. It's very different, the reality of being a police officer to what is on TV and all of that. And I was also for a long time a prosecutor and a legal advisor for the police. So a lot of my experience is from reading briefs and going to court and prosecuting matters and stuff. So I mean, I did see some pretty horrible things in my career, and some fascinating crimes, some of them. And I know that might sound old as in fascinating, but I'm quite interested in the psychology behind why people do things. And I think that's also why I love writing, because I get to delve into that psychology, and particularly for my villains. So I suppose in terms of how it's my real life, in terms of my career has influenced my writing, is I use some of that psychology and that, you know, what I've seen in terms of the motivations for why people have done things, to try and bring a bit of that into my villains.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, because I have tried to explain this to people before, whether it be readers or friends, and say I have a very intrigued when it comes to why people do things, their patterns, their behaviors, and the psychology behind how everyone functions. It might be a little bit bad, like I'll just analyze people, but I'm like, I feel like as writers, a lot of us do this commonly because this is what we are trained to do now, because we need to understand the motivation behind our characters and why they're doing things, and making sure it's realistic as well. So I love that you brought that up, because I don't feel so crazy now.
No. Well, to be honest, how can you really get to the bones of your story if you don't understand all of your characters, not just your main characters? If you do have mystery elements, you need to know your villain as much as you know your hero and heroine, because how else do you really get down to the authenticity of why they're doing what they're doing? Because at the end of the day, even the worst criminals all feel they're justified in a way for their actions. So I think being a writer, you have to be able to delve into that to find out why really are they doing what they're doing. And that way they become three-dimensional, not just 2D villain cutouts of, oh, they're bad, because no one ever really thinks they're actually bad, even though we know, well, yeah, what you're doing is just beyond terrible. But to them, they don't think that. So I think if you can delve underneath why, it really makes for a richer, more rounded story for all of your characters. You know, they always say that your villains should always be a step ahead and a bit smarter than your hero and heroine. I think it's true, because that gives the story a lot more interest. If it's coming easy to your heroine and hero in terms of finding out the baddie, that's not much of a mystery behind it, is it?
I love this. I'm just like, yay, not crazy, maybe crazy, but crazy together. Two crazy Australians, fantastic. One thing I do want to talk about too is The Devilish Duke, which won RWA for Australian Historical Romance. Phenomenal. What was the moment that you found out you're on the list, and most importantly, how did you celebrate?
Yeah, so I got an email from the coordinator of the contest saying, "Oh, you've made the finals. Can you come to Melbourne for the conference?" And I was thinking to myself, do I bother? It's a lot, a lot of money to spend going to a conference, particularly because I was also up against Anne Gracie. She was one of the finalists. And I'm not sure if you know much about Anne Gracie, but she's a New York Times best-selling historical romance author. She's one of Australia's best historical romance authors. And I thought, yeah, there's no chance, no chance I will, take out the title with her in the running. But at the end of the day, I thought, oh, yeah, look, I'll go because, I might never final again. So it'll be fun to be there, go to the awards ceremony dinner and be part of it. And so I did. And then at the dinner, I was just because they were announcing the top three. So, and I was just thinking, because I think there was three finalists out of all of the entries. So I was just kind of thinking, at least let me get number 2, maybe. So I was hoping for that. So then when Tanya Bird was named number 3, she's an excellent writer as well, by the way, another Aussie author. I was getting ready to stand up and, go my second place award. And then when they popped up Anne Gracie's book cover and photo on the screen for second place, that kind of was like, I was in shock. I was like, oh my God, realizing that I had won. It was surreal. It was an amazing experience. It was incredible. And my debut book too, I never, thought that would happen. So I think I was in a bit of shock accepting the award. So, but no, it was awesome. It was like one of the best moments of my author career, winning that award. Yeah, it was really cool. And obviously it was 2019, so it was before COVID hit, so we could actually attend things in person. And so it was lovely. It was really cool.
And to have worked on something for so long, to, as you said, being that 13-year-old who had picked up her first book, snuck her mother's book out, and then knowing you wanted to do this, and obviously, as you said, life, but still having that focus and goal, and then to be at that point is amazing. What a moment.
It really was, because really things picked up in, from 2017 when I decided, nah, this is it, got to do it if I'm going to do it. And yeah, to getting my agent, editor, publishing, getting it published and then entering it in and winning the award, it was an awesome time period for me. So.
What did you do for yourself? How did you celebrate?
What did I do? Not a lot, because I was on my own in Melbourne. But yeah, when I got home the next day, flew back to Sydney, hubby took me out for dinner, so that was really nice. So yeah, I must say I'm a bit low key. Not a real party or anything like that, as I think a lot of us writers are. We can be quite introvert sometimes. So
as long as you did something though for you, I think it's such an important and we always encourage each other to do it, and then we usually don't do it, but to really celebrate your accomplishments, because that's so amazing. What then would you say throughout your writing career so far has been your greatest challenge, maybe?
My greatest challenge has probably actually just been getting the words down some days. That can be really hard. As much as I have, especially when you're under contract too. And the last couple of years have been really difficult with COVID and everything going on, because I was ridiculously busy at work with all of that, because I was a legal advisor at the time. So we were having to provide so much legal advice to police out in the field as to what they could or couldn't do with the new public health orders. So it was a really, really busy time. So that was probably the hardest in terms of actually getting words down on the page, especially being under contract. But I was really lucky, and Tangled was so good with me pushing back deadlines and just letting them know, listen, I'm struggling, I can't do this. And they were wonderful. They allowed me to push back my deadline lines. So that was really good. But I think that is also struggling with some self-doubt sometimes as well. Like, you kind of every time a new book comes out, you think, is it going to be received well? Is it going to do as well? Is it, I suppose, especially to starting really high with my first book, and because it did phenomenally well, that there's always that pressure. Can you top that? Can you match that? It's people think, I suppose, or first people that aren't published yet think that once you get published, that's it. That's smooth sailing, and it's actually not. It's just the very beginning of the journey. So, and I think that's important to remember, and to be kind to yourself, to not expect, that everything is going to just get better and bigger, and to just plod along, do the work, do the best you can, but get words on the page. That's the most important thing.
Being consistent. And I think a lot of people too, you can never prepare yourself for what this career is going to bring to you, and it always looks different for each author, and it is their own journey. But I think when you go into, you're like, I've published my first book, and then you realize, now what? And that's exactly that. Then, speaking of entangled and expectations as to what's to come, what is some advice you would offer new authors when going into a contract with agents or publishers in regards to expectation?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think going into my contract with Pamela, I really read every single word. And obviously from my legal background, I'm a nerd with things. I love reading manuals. I read contracts. That's what I do. So, but I can't stress the importance enough of reading every single clause in there. And if you're not sure, ask, because once you sign something, you can't unsign it, and particularly in publishing, it's very easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of, oh my gosh, someone wants to publish me, and you'll just sign whatever, but you don't realize that the rights you're actually signing away can be pretty important. So I was lucky in the fact that I do have that legal background. So I was very happy with my agent's contract. And then when we got the publisher's contract, I obviously, she reads it, she gets her contract department to read it. They suggested changes that Entangled implemented. Then I got to read over the final one that my agent was happy with. And yeah, I was happy with that too. And I suppose it can be daunting because it's huge. Like, proper publishing contracts are huge. Like, they're pages and pages talking about all sorts of things you have. Well, I never had any idea about foreign rights, audio rights, film rights, all of these rights that you are basically signing away when you are giving, signing a contract for saying, yes, publish my book. You've got to be really careful with reversion clauses and how can you get your rights back if it's not selling, because some publishers want to hold on to it for a very long time. So you've got to make sure that you're happy with that. And I know in Australia, actually, you can get some agents that will, like Alex Adetzi, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's quite a big, she used to be an editor, but she's now a agent, and for the Australian industry. She offers contracts, you can pay her that she'll go through your contract. She won't take you on as a client, but she'll go. I haven't used her services, but I just know she comes highly recommended. So, there are services out there that if you don't have a legal background or you don't have an agent, then that's probably my suggestion is what you should use. Also, if you do get a contract with the publisher, before you sign it, see if an agent's interested. Because often if you have a publishing contract, they will want to sign you up, and they will probably even want to shop it around to some other publishers first before you sign a contract with another agent. So that can be a really good way of getting an agent as well. So you want to do that.
Those are great tips. Now, we've focused and loved the other writers. One thing I want to talk about is readers, who are everything to us. They make the dream come true. So what has been your most memorable reader interaction moment so far?
To be honest, I've had so many, like, it just blows me away. Like, in terms, I know they say you shouldn't read your reviews. I can't help it. And I think a lot of authors are hard pressed. Although, having said that, I generally try to stick to only the good reviews. So I purposely try to just look at those. Although I must say, the more books you release, the more you do actually not worry so much about the bad reviews, you know. So if you get a 1-star or a 2-star, like at the beginning for my first book, it was like, oh my God, how is this possible? But now you do get used to it the more you go. I didn't think I ever would, but you do, because in a way you can kind of look at it and sometimes take some constructive criticism from it. Other times not. Readers are so subjective. Some people will absolutely adore your work and others just won't. And that's just how it is. So you get to a point where you understand that. But yeah, it's reading some of the comments in those reviews, like especially when they say, oh, I found a new favorite historical romance author, like that makes my day. I love hearing that. Like, it's so cool. And then when I actually get private, like personal messages on Facebook or Instagram, and they say, oh, I'm read all your books, or I've read your latest and I absolutely loved it, and I just want to let you know. I mean, that's like, I think, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, going from someone 5 years ago where it was a dream to be an author, to actually being recognized by readers, and realizing, I suppose, that the stories that I've written are actually really resonating with them, and they're loving the characters and the plot. And it just I think, yeah, this is why I'm doing it, to bring those stories that are in my head, to bring that enjoyment and magic to other people. So it's really cool. So every time I read a positive review, or get one of those, an email or a message from a reader, it's awesome. It's really cool.
Do you have a Facebook reader group?
I don't. I'm a patroness in a group called the Drawing Room, and so I post in there. But I have my Facebook page and my other personal page. But I don't have a reader group just myself per se. I've been toying with whether I do that or not, because I have a few author mates who do have them, but I just don't know if I can handle that as well as all my. I must say, I'm not very good with keeping up to date with social media and stuff. I try to, especially around release time, but otherwise I tend to forget about it.
That's fine. It's a lot of extra work to put on top. It's not just writing as well. So when you are taking those extra commitments, it is hard to find the time to focus on those as well. So I completely understand that. This is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal? What is the dream that you were chasing for your career?
Isn't everyone chasing to be like a New York Times bestseller?
Yes.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, my next goal, I want to get print books in stores in the US. That's what I want to do. And then I would like to get a trade paperback deal, as opposed to, because looking at first a mass market paperback deal and then looking to a trade paperback. I also want to write some suspense, some contemporary suspense thrillers as well. So I do want to write both historical romance, but I also want to move out into the suspense thrillers as well, using my background, obviously, in the police to do that. So yeah, so they're my goals. I mean, ultimately, as if I can, be doing what I love full time, that's kind of the dream in a way that I've kind of got at the moment. So it's really cool. So I'm really appreciative of that. But yeah, there's always more milestones to achieve. Although I must say, you can't really control, whether you hit lists or whether you win awards or anything like that. So at the end of the day, if I am making readers happy with my books and I'm selling my books, my publisher's happy, and I'm happy, because then that allows me to do what I love to do, which is write. So yeah.
With wanting to do contemporary suspense, are you looking at doing another pen name?
Yeah, I'll probably use my maiden name, Maddison Knight.
Cool.
So yeah. So I probably will, just so that my readers know it's very different. Because I mean, one thing I must say, I'm not a huge fan of writing heated moments in my romance books, sexy bedtime scene. I'm not a huge fan of writing that. I often leave that to last. I, put in the manuscript, okay, love making scene goes here. And I'll go back and I'll do it at the end because I really love the story and the characters more than that aspect of it. But readers for romance expect that, and they love those sorts of scenes. So I can't deny them that. But I would like to, when I do, obviously, my thrillers suspense, that, there might be some love interest happening between the main characters, but that's not the main part of the story. The actual plot-driven suspense, whodunit, mystery is the main part. So that's ultimately one of the things I'd love to do. So
that's so exciting. It's always refreshing doing a new genre as well. Now, I have a segment called Speed Dating with Author. So basically, it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
Okay, bring
Here
it
we
on.
go. Like, this is the dangerous part. All right. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
What's the sorry?
The clumsiest moment you've ever had.
I break cups and cutlery all the time. So, don't take me to a fancy restaurant. It's not a good look.
What is 3 words that best describe you?
Determined, enthusiastic, and optimistic.
Oh, I love those. Are we the same person? That's literally the 3 I would use for myself. I love that. What is the song that best describes you?
Oh, gosh. I'm terrible with songs. Like, I don't know the names of them.
You can sing it. I don't mind.
I'm really bad with songs. I love 80s songs. I'm a big 80s ballad girl. I love that sort of thing. I can't think of a name of one. Baby Shark is always in my head because my daughter sings that. I kid you not, I will hear something and I'll be humming it. I won't even know what the song is. I don't know the words, but I'm notorious for doing that.
What is your life motto?
Well, if you don't try something different, you'll always be doing the same thing. So give things a try. Yeah.
What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
I have a hobby in lock picking.
Really?
Not very good at it, but I can occasionally do it. It's for my writing, so a lot of my characters can lock pick. And so I thought, well, being, I suppose, a method writer sometimes, I want to know what that's like. So I got into it as a hobby in terms of learning the mechanics of actually how you go about lock picking a lock. So quite interesting.
Did you just YouTube that, or like where did you find that?
You can actually buy books on it, actually, and you can join, not that I have, but you can join clubs that lockpicking is a hobby for.
Wow, that's so cool. I love that. I have had so much fun today. I am going to look into lockpicking now. I don't know if it'll be any good, but I'll give it a go. But we'll have competitions. Where do we find you? Where do readers find you? What's coming out? What do we need to know?
Sure. Just my website, maddisonmichaels.com. If they go to that, there's links to all my books, my latest releases. I'm on social, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, although I don't go on that so much. But Facebook and Instagram I'm usually on. So you can find me there, and all that's on my website too, all the information for that. So
amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And who knows, watch this space. Maybe we'll get you on next year and see where you're at.
Thanks, Kia. It's been lovely having you having me on here. I've enjoyed our chats. So.
Yeah, likewise. And I'm going to love you and leave you, but I'll talk to you later.
Thanks. See you.
Bye, guys.